Hogmanay is the Scots word for New Year's Eve, which it is today as I sit here in front of this camera. Hogmanay is a big deal in Scotland, and I'm going to talk a bit today about some of my past Hogmanays when I was performing. I mean, that kind of performing. And about what it was like for me after I got sober, and about what it's like today. Hi, I'm Cams. I'm an alcoholic. Hogmanay, New Year's Eve. It's a crazy time of year for everybody, but especially for alcoholics. Whether you be performing alcoholic or a recovering alcoholic, it doesn't matter. It's a crazy, crazy time. One of the things I like to do is to look back through my journal. I have been writing since 1986, so there's quite a bit there, a few years. And one of the early entries that came up this morning when I was looking through the On This Day feature of day one, the entry that came up was from 1987, where it said that my dad had bought me 12 cans for New Year's Eve for Hogmanay. Now in December 1987, I was 16. But that's how it was in those days. I think drinking in the west coast of Scotland is still a problem today, but I think back then perhaps it was more of a problem. I don't know. This is just how I remember it. At the time, I had been drinking for probably 4 years, I want to say. I remember my first carry out when I was at the age of 12, and that was the first time I experienced that feeling of, oh my God, I feel okay for the first time in my life, right? And that feeling was the feeling that made me want to continue drinking. And now at the time, I would not have said that I was an alcoholic. I'm not even sure that I'd ever heard the word, so it wasn't on my radar at all. But what I do remember is that pretty much every Hogmanay after that, I would drink myself into blackout. And I'm not talking about blacking out as in passing out, I'm talking about blacking out as in still being on my feet and functioning, but with no memory of it at all the next day. So I was in that strange kind of mode where I don't actually know. This is a thing that I would like to explore a bit more about what happens to your consciousness when you get into that blackout stage. It's something I will be looking at in a future video, so if you want to hear that kind of stuff, subscribe to the channel, because I'm really looking forward to diving into that. The blackouts were a common feature of my drinking, and I would normally wake up on New Year's Day feeling rough as, and then I would continue drinking to get rid of that hangover and go into a party on New Year's Day. We would traditionally have really fun parties on New Year's Day, which would take me into another blackout, and so it would continue. When I got sober, which was October 2005, there were only a few months to go till Christmas. Now, I don't actually remember the details of my first sober New Year, but at the time, I was attending 3 meetings a week, and I had a sponsor. I got myself a sponsor from pretty early on when I got into the rooms, which is something that I would really recommend that you do if you're new to the rooms of AA. So that was 2005, and we're now in 2020, so I've had, 15 New Year's days, 15 Hogmanays in sobriety. Now, one of the things that I remember about my family going back was I always used to make it home for the bells. Doesn't matter where I was or what state I was in, somehow I always managed to get back to my mum and dad's house for the bells. And it was always an emotional time, particularly for my mum. She always used to cry when the bells went. There was a feeling of nostalgia, a feeling of hope, a feeling of emotion, right? And that feeling of emotion became part of my life as well. And if I'm honest, it still is. Which is a bit of a problem because it leads to a feeling of expectation, right? Now, I know that the expectation as a young drinker was also excitement because it was party time, right? So when I got sober, the feeling of expectation was still there, and it would generally lead to disappointment because there was no... The expectation didn't lead anywhere. You know, the bells would go ding, 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 and then we'd be like, okay, now what? You know? And my mum died in 2016. That was a particularly difficult Christmas and New Year for me. I remember breaking down unexpectedly when we watched Forrest Gump, and it was the bit where his mum died, and if it's like, oh my God, I was in pieces.
What's the matter, Mom?
I'm dying, Forrest. Come on in, sit down over here.
But that feeling of expectation is still there, right? Because is it a cultural thing? I don't know. But it's still part of my life, and now I'm sitting here on Hogmanay trying not to acknowledge that feeling of expectation, because I know that it's false. I know that there's nothing there. I know that it's going to reach midnight and then it's going to be the next day. The same as happens every night at midnight, okay? I'm not going to be going to parties. I'm not going to be seeing friends. I'm going to be home with my family, which is precisely where I want to be, right? The family that I still have miraculously, because, you know, that wasn't a given during my drinking times. I'm making this video partly to make myself feel better because, you know, I have been feeling a bit down over the past few days, and I believe that that has something to do with the time of year. So I've been trying to be kind to myself and just allow myself not to feel okay and not to worry too much about it, because it's the time of year and mindfulness and spirituality. So I'm faced now with that feeling of expectation and trying not to acknowledge it, and just wondering how I'm going to feel tonight, because I don't know. Perhaps I won't stay up for the bells, but I think I probably will, because I have a 16-year-old daughter who's probably going to want to do that. Maybe I should just be with the family at that time and just enjoy that love and that feeling of being with the people that I love most in the world. And so, yes, making this video has been helpful already. I'm beginning to feel gratitude, and that's something I'm looking for more in my life every day when I'm feeling that sense of hopelessness and that nothing's going right and it's dark outside at 4 o'clock. You know, it's just a crazy time of year. And I think that this year particularly, when loved ones are not able to get together, you know, talk about gratitude. So really, I've got nothing to feel sad about. I am not going to pick up a drink today. It's already, where are we? 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So I've got this far without picking up a drink. I've got my Alcoholics Anonymous network that I can call upon, and I'm really enjoying making this content and exploring my sobriety and hoping that it brings value to you out there. If you're a suffering alcoholic, whether you're still performing or maybe you're in recovery, maybe you have a lot of recovery, that doesn't mean that you're not still suffering. So if that's the case, I hope that this kind of content really helps you and that you find value. If you do, let me know. Click the like button down below. If you would like to leave a comment and let me know how you're doing, I would love to hear from you. That's how AA works. We get to share our experience, our strength, and our hope with one another that we may solve our common problem. All that remains is for me to wish you all a very happy new year. I wish you a sober new year, and if you don't have that, don't beat yourself up. You can get back on the horse and find sobriety, and hopefully we'll get to keep it together by sharing it. Thanks for watching, and remember, you're not alone.